Cabin Abrolhos, it's like there's no place in the world like these. And ever since I was a child, I've been absolutely obsessed.
This archipelago of around 195 low-lying windswept isles is renowned for its fantasia of marine life, gruesome shipwreck history, and lucrative rock lobster catch. But the Abrolhos is also internationally significant for another, lesser-known reason. Birds. Millions of them. Come spring and the sky here fills with a riot of squawking, screeching, wheeling and diving birds who flock here to breed.
It's a beautiful place. We're lucky to have sea lions breeding here at the northern limit of their range, and every now and then in the shallows you see these beautiful, majestic tiger sharks swimming past in the sandy shallows and the light refracting off the backs of those things. The situation of the coral reefs being so far south, here at 29 degrees south, we've got this whole admixture of crazy topsy-turvy things going on. The coral reefs are almost competing with kelps, so southern species, seaweed, growing side by side to a tropical species of, stagcorn corals and plate corals that you see in the shallows that you'd more associate with things like Ningaloo or the Great Barrier Reef.
For 30 years, marine ecologist Dr Chris Surman has journeyed to these far-flung isles to research the birds, despite a lack of funding. He hitches rides with fishermen and pours his own money into the research. With plans for tourism intensifying at the newly declared Houtman-Abrolhos National Park and climate pressures mounting, he's more determined than ever to protect the islands and the birds.
You've got seabirds that breed not only on subantarctic islands, but the northern limit of their range is here. And then you've got species that nest in the tropics, and their southern end of their range is at the Abrolhos, and they're all breeding side by side. And one of the most significant seabird rookeries in Australia, and certainly in the Indian Ocean. It's just mind-blowing. You can go down to Palisade Island, which is the largest and most significant seabird breeding colony in Australia, and see dreads, which is when birds lift up off their nests in one, and the sky blackens. You can look through that and just see whirling, groups of tens of thousands of birds. My passion is for the islands. I love the islands, the environment, the seascape, the landscape, the vibe that you get out here. It's unique. I've been to a lot of islands. I spent my whole working life on islands, and this place is home to me, and so that passion drives the work I do on the birds.
That passion began in his childhood when Chris and his family sailed to the Abrolhos on his father's yacht for weekends.
So when coming out here, just being completely engulfed by bird life and marine life, and just everywhere you looked was just eye-opening and gobsmacking. And as you get older, you realise, well, this is incredible that we've got something like this just off the midwest coast of Western Australia, something that you'd expect off the tropics or, the Great Barrier Reef or something like that. It's world class.
Given his passion for the area, studying marine ecology was Chris's obvious choice, leading to a PhD on Abrolhos birds.
In 1991, when I sailed the yacht out here to do my honours degree and started doing the seabird research out here, this is where we set up our base camp. And where we're here now is the kitchen area, kitchen and dining area. We had a tarpaulin over the top with a few bits of wood on top of that to stop it blowing away, and had prepared meals just out there in the kitchen area. Sat down here, did our data analysis and transcribing and all that sort of stuff, and where we are right now, yeah.
During Chris's early work, his now ex-partner, Dr Lisa Nicholson, a fellow seabird scientist, joined Chris to study the birds.
We would often camp on Palisade Island, and we'd walk a kilometre to the colony that we were monitoring at the time, and then walk back, and just that dark velvety night sky. We wouldn't put head torches on because we didn't want to affect the birds, and you just become so absorbed in the sounds, the sound of the wind, the sound of the birds' calls, the sounds of the shearwaters howling their beautiful ghostly calls. you can't help but be just swept up in this amazing story that was unfolding all around us. And it never got old.
The Abrolhos came to mean so much to Lisa and Chris that they erected a monument here in honour of their 2 babies who died soon after birth.
One of the reasons we chose to have the boys' ashes out at the Abrolhos Islands is that our connection with the islands was very strong, and it was part of their story while I was pregnant. But it was also, I think, for both of us, knowing that their ashes would become part of another ecosystem, part of something so beautiful.
After the birth of their son Shay, he joined his parents for long study trips to the Abrolhos. Shay too came to love the Abrolhos, with treasured memories of hand-feeding giant cod, combing the beaches, and, of course, studying the birds.
The best few years of my life was probably just standard, but once I started realising what a special place it was and how it was actually pretty hard to get out here and hard to see the stuff that we saw, really started to appreciate how special it was. I have, since.
Shay is now also studying marine ecology and is continually inspired by Chris's dedication to his work.
I think it shows that he has a lot of passion for what he does, and the fact he does it so regularly as well, it's just, and when he's in the mangroves and they can see he's in his happy place doing the stuff he loves. So I think it's good on him for doing it without getting paid.
While the trio look back on these early days at the Abrolhos with fond memories, the lack of funding, the sheer volume of fieldwork, and the lack of recognition took a toll.
One of the things that became an issue more and more as time went on was the need to earn a certain amount of money to support the requirements of a family, a place to live, things that are not based on field work. And sometimes when you're funneling most of your funds into your passion or trying to juggle those things, it can become quite stressful. We started doing other work, industry-based work, that assisted with funding the continuing Abrolhos work. And when some of those contracts came to an end for various reasons, the stress of that started to impact on us as a family. And I feel like the stress of that really, Chris bore a cost with that stress. It felt at times like we were constantly struggling to get recognition for the importance of this work. We're still in an era that doesn't really value in an economic sense the importance of research of this type. I really admire Chris's drive and passion. There's not many people that you meet that will keep on a path that they know is worthwhile, even when events are stacked against them. And some people might call it madness, but I feel like it's what makes him tick.
I've had a few years being fully funded in the early days of the project, and that's what developed the project. But because of my passion for the islands and what makes the birds tick and that curiosity that keeps driving you to come back here, even though it can be blowing 30 knots for 3 weeks at a time and everything's hard, just working the mangroves, driving the boat and down there, logistics and stuff like that, you still want to see how they're going and what the end game is for that season. The value in these long-term databases is becoming so important now in this day and age when there's talk of global warming, what is happening around the world with our seas, the acidification of oceans, the increase in plastics, the pollution, and all these things have flow-on effects to the animals that live in the ocean.
Over several months each year, Chris monitors nests, the numbers and conditions of eggs, chicks and birds, and analyses how these factors relate to oceanography. He bands birds to identify individuals year after year and fits some birds with tiny GPS trackers to work out where they travel to feed.
There's a couple of things that the researchers highlighted, and one is how fragile the seabird breeding season is. What we've found is that out this area is that west of the Abrolhos there's a superabundance of certain types of prey, and when they're larval fish, that's when the seabirds can get to them.
If those larval fish decline or move far from the Abrolhos, the birds suffer. Factors like changing currents, El Nino and La Nina cycles, and overfishing of the bigger predatory fish that drive larval fish to the surface each take a toll on the bird's prey species.
And I've been out here where the food has shifted and we've had complete die-offs of a whole breeding cohort of chicks. Turned up and all the chicks are dead on the nests, hundreds of thousands. So the future's grim, really. I mean, it's hard to keep optimistic about the future of birds. We're really lucky here. Like at the moment, it seems reasonably okay. Lesser Noddy population seems to be reasonably stable. But the global picture is quite disturbing. And that's what makes even more important places like the Hamilton Abrolhos, where you have such a stronghold for seabirds.
With a push for more tourism at the Abrolhos, Chris is more determined than ever to protect this stronghold.
When you get people who want to go onto the beach, they want to land on the island and have that visitor experience. So just that aspect of landing visitors is always going to have an impact. You might not recognise that you're adjacent to crested terns. It's surface nesters, they just nest on bare ground, close to the shoreline, and at certain times of the year you can't walk past those colonies because birds will be disturbed off their nest sites, chicks and eggs will be exposed. Then species, we call them increase of species like silver gulls, will eat those eggs and chicks. Well, you need to have very small groups, you need to manage when they visit, you need to close off areas almost when there's peak breeding times, so, and give people the information as to why. There is that big push for new tourism ideas and products and stuff like that, and I think it can work. That's got to be the right spot and done at the right times. We're custodians, we've got to look after the place, and it doesn't want to be just a short-term benefit for the first few people who come and visit the area, and then it's not there later on.
I really think it's so important that this work continues and that it gets the recognition that it requires, because the time is now. The time is now for us to start seeing the value in this work and in all long-term research around Australia and around the world. So my hopes for Chris is that he grows old bones doing this amazingly important job that he loves so much.